Then it is my great pleasure. I would like to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. And this is just a program update. Originally, we were supposed to have Christos Arvantiades from the Hellenic Center for Marine Research as our speaker. Unfortunately, he had something come up very last minute. He could not join us. So there is a program change, just so you know. But we were very happy and excited to win over Dr. Rima-Maria Rahal. And Rima will be talking to us about the importance of permanent employment contracts for research quality and robustness. So let me just first see if the Dr. Rahal is there. Are you there?
Hi, here I am.
Oh, fantastic. And where are you physically now? Which city are you in?
Physically, I'm in Cologne.
In Cologne. Kola Alaf. Very, very nice to see you.
That's right.
Very good. So we can hear and see you very well. I'm going to give a brief introduction. And just as a reminder also, many of our participants are academics. We have a lot of doctor titles, professor titles, but during our conversations, we take the titles away and just stick with first name basis. Is that okay also with you? Sense. Okay, super, very good. So let me continue here. Rima is with the Max Planck Institute for Research on Collective Goods. Also, she has a very impressive resume. I just picked out a few highlights. Rima studied psychology in Heidelberg and Amsterdam and received her doctorate from Leiden University for her dissertation on the cognitive foundations of decisions in social and moral dilemmas, which she worked on at the Max Planck Institute for Research on Collective Goods in Bonn. She is an alumni of the fellowship Freies Wissen, and if I translate that correctly, it's free knowledge. And she created an open online course on the methodological basics of scientific experimentation, incorporating open science practices. And currently, she serves on the steering board of the German Reproducibility Network. Today, she will talk about promoting robust and reproducible research as a solid stepping stone for future research endeavors and for the reliable translation of findings into policies, interventions, and innovations. The goal being here to improve the precarious labor conditions for researchers in Germany and improve research practices, while also offering the chance to leverage the potential for structural change to benefit research quality. So with that, before we begin, I'd like to just blend in our URL code for the QR code that you can go ahead, if you'd like to, you can go ahead and put your questions there. Thank you very much to Malta, our technical guru for today. And of course, also, if you'd like, you can go ahead and put any questions into our Zoom at the Q&A tool function. And with that, I would say it is a great pleasure and a great honor to welcome Dr. Rima-Maria Rahal. I'll give you a virtual round of applause. The digital stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me see if I can get my screen share going here. That should work now. All right. Well, then thank you again for having me and for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today about some thoughts and arguments I've been working on writing down together with members and friends of the German Reproducibility Network, GRN, about the importance of permanent employment contracts for fostering research quality and robustness. And throughout my talk today, my basic assumption will be that doing good research, whatever that may mean exactly, well, because it's a bit different depending on the research tradition and the discipline one works in, whatever it means exactly, research quality requires open scholarship. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here when I say that openness and transparency are just the basic quality criteria to be fulfilled for research to be considered soundly done. And that research needs to also be robust, so replicable and reproducible. And I think we can, especially in this forum, mostly agree on the fact that this is a basis for creating robust and sound research. Of course, good research doesn't only need to be open. The list goes on. It probably also needs to be a couple of other things. And recently, however, we've had to worry that this basic idea that research needs to be robust and open, and as quality criteria of research, that these criteria may actually not be met often in the research that is commonly done at the moment. So we see, on the other hand, a movement of open scholarship that is experiencing a surge thanks to some efforts from mostly driven by individuals and grassroots approaches, but it's still far from the norm at the moment to commit to open scholarship practices. But to make good scientific practice the norm, it actually just takes more than only individuals pushing for it and only grassroots work. And this is the basic argument that I'll make today, which is that the need for good scientific practice and open scholarship must be reflected in institutional structures and system-wide change, in committees, and also in incentive structures in the academic environment that research takes place in. But as I will argue now, the institutional structures in academia as they are now, specifically the employment conditions, are actually not suitable for fostering open scholarship. And with that, they're not really suitable for fostering high quality research. And actually, the argument I will make is that the setup which we have in terms of employment contracts at the moment is actually counterproductive. So I will start my argument with the German case, which recently has gotten a lot of traction due to the Ich bin Hanna movement, which translates to I am Hanna, which has spurred public discussion and actually also labor disputes about the employment situation in German academia, where people have been protesting against the effects of the Wissenschaftszeitvertragsgesetz, that the Academic Fixed-Term Contract Act. And this act imposes limitations on the career durations of non-tenured academic staff, which is actually quite an unusual exception from German labor law more generally. And in particular, this act stipulates that there's a maximum time frame for obtaining your PhD, that's 6 years, and an additional qualification period of another 6 years for postdocs, which there's an exception to. So in the medical field, people have 9 years left to complete their postdoc, whatever that might mean. And after this time frame has elapsed, individuals can no longer hold non-tenured, publicly funded academic positions, with the exception of project-based funding. But you cannot hold a regular Haushaltsstelle, so a regular university position that's funded through the regular university grants, money that the university is endowed with, if this is a non-tenured position. So you can no longer hold these non-permanent positions. And in effect, this means that at the end of your postdoc time clock, you either have to find a permanent position or you don't, and you have to leave. And you have to pursue a career outside of academia. And this means that in the majority of cases, actually in Germany, careers simply end there, because there are only so few permanent positions available that many of the highly qualified postdocs simply drop out at the end of once their tenure clock has run out. This is not just a problem in Germany. The lack of permanent positions is not just a German problem, but internationally, we see similar signs of problematic employment conditions. Of course, to varying degrees and with manifold variations in how employment structures are implemented in detail. But I'll just pick out 2 examples here to make my point. So one example, in the UK, we have about 32% of academic staff employed on fixed-term contracts. So those are, again, non-permanent contracts. And postdoc positions are typically funded via project-based grants that range between short timeframes between 2 and 5 years. And another example, in the Philippines, graduate education, both at the master's and the doctorate level, is rarely publicly funded. And early career researchers therefore have to either self-finance or find third-party funding for their thesis and dissertations themselves. So that's even a step earlier than in the German system, where you are clocked and run out, and there's already very little funding at this stage, at this very early stage of research careers. And there are many more international examples we could look at that demonstrate that there are only few permanent positions awaiting academics pursuing a career in research. Now, why is this so? Why is the system designed this way? What is this shortage of permanent positions argued to be good for? And again, I'll move to the particulars of the German case, because here this argument is made very salient and very explicit. But we can also pick this up again in other contexts. But especially in the German case, we see two main arguments for why limitations are imposed on employment durations in academia. And the first justification often chosen is to promote innovation through attracting fresh ideas and the thinkers of fresh ideas. So the idea is, if you have more throughput through the academic system, there is a lot of fluctuation in staff, then the potential for innovation is higher because more people go through the system. And the second argument that is often made is that these limitations are imposed to make sure only the best researchers stay in the system on permanent positions. To put this bluntly, there are very few permanent positions to, in the words of the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, avoid clogging the system with tenured researchers. So the incentives are supposed to promote high research quality through ensuring innovation and making sure that only the best stay in the system. I, however, will argue that these incentives are actually turned around and created problems for research quality instead of achieving these two goals. Instead of producing innovation and keeping only the best researchers, I would argue that the low proportion of permanent contracts in academia, to my mind, actually creates two problems, namely an extreme turnover in research staff and a biased selection of the people who will obtain a permanent position. So first, let's talk about the extreme turnover. While a high turnover by definition just guarantees change in the system, and that could produce innovation, extreme turnover, as it is created, for instance, in the German case, has detrimental effects for the academic staff that are propelled through the system. It creates stress, it creates a pressure to publish, and it creates an enormous amount of uncertainty because there is just a clock ticking at which one's career can end. This setup, this extreme stress and this pressure actually cannot really foster innovation. Actually, there's little scientific evidence that such pressure can truly foster creativity. Quite on the contrary, psychological research suggests that highly evaluative contexts and contexts that are highly uncontrollable for the people in them really hamper creativity, and therefore maybe just a threat to innovation. And at the same time, instead of promoting high quality research, this high turnover may threaten the continuity of research engagement. Research projects can hit a dead end when researchers have to drop out because their contracts have expired. So this means that methodological expertise, which often takes years to acquire, is just lost when highly skilled researchers are pushed out of the academic job market at the end of their tenure clock. And research projects and equipment are just orphaned due to the lack of expert thinkers and users, such that a new generation of researchers spends then again time to build up this expertise to use and proceed on these projects, only to again become exchanged at the end of their postdoc clock. So in effect, this means that research progress is slowed and resources are wasted, such that research quality suffers. And high turnover is actually a threat to research progress and innovation rather than its driving force. Second, the argument that fixed-term contracts can promote research quality rests on the assumption that they create an environment where only the best researchers will remain in the system. And those researchers who are unsuccessful at securing a permanent positions are just considered as simply not the best. But for that to be true, we would actually have to be good at selecting the best researchers for permanent positions. But the procedures we use to do this at the moment are actually highly problematic. Because at the moment, permanent positions are awarded largely based on performance on metrics such as acquired third-party funding, publications in journals with high impact factors, or a publication-based H-index. But when researchers are incentivized to pursue these things, to pursue third-party funding or to publish in highly desirable journals, what is incentivized is not genuine scientific progress and knowledge generation. But what we incentivize is producing a lot of publications with results that are flashy enough to be published in these high quality, high impact factor journals, and therefore may actually be pseudo-innovative and just based in mainstream research areas. what this does is, in effect, it disincentivizes the thorough, painstaking process of corroborating and documenting research. And in short, it disincentivizes good research practice. So instead, this rewards work that games the system, for instance, by using questionable research practices to get your publication count up. And so research quality suffers. That means in sum, the two assumptions underlying the widespread use of fixed-term employment contracts, to my mind, are actually deeply flawed. Okay, but what can we do to reach a more sustainable employment structure? I'll plug 5 thoughts here that may help us along the way of getting out of this, this problematic incentive system that we see widely spread, and in particular in the German case at the moment. I would argue first that incentives should mirror the fact that high quality research often requires team research. But where career paths are actually cut short and first authorship is the currency that makes a career, it's unreasonable to expect that researchers will invest heavily in learning specific research skills that will not land them a first author position. And long-term research career perspectives are just necessary for researchers to be able to invest into specialized skills and to put them to use without worrying about the credit they will get for it. High quality research requires teams of researchers with different skill sets. For instance, recognizing the merit of the work of research software engineers, data stewards, theory experts, experimentalists, statisticians, and so on and so forth, who can forge long-term collaborative projects that are more than just a means to an end to securing a job. Second, I would argue that incentive structures should promote programmatic research. In the current environment with the lack of permanent positions, what you need to do to get one of those is to swiftly publish several small but catchy contributions. And this vastly trumps publishing a carefully planned multi-study investigation simply because you can get more pieces on your record, more published pieces on your record. Problematically, in such a regime, it does not pay to take the time to work on holistically understanding a complex research question, or to pursue a programmatic research agenda to test the boundary conditions and the generalizability of your insights, or to even use methods that are non-traditional in a specific research area, or to ask research questions that lie off the trodden path of the mainstream, because it is unclear if your investigation will be successful, and you cannot afford that. So in effect, research progress and gaining knowledge require more programmatic research agendas rather than institutional incentives that require boosting one's personal publication count. Third, incentives should promote good scientific practice, where research projects are carried out with the goal of becoming hireable in academia and not with the goal of gaining knowledge and research progress. The incentive system just rewards the quantity and not the quality of research contributions. And in such a regime, it does not pay to take the time to replicate your work, and it does not pay to take the time to make your data and code and other materials openly available for documentation or even for reuse. And this lack of focus on robustness, replication, and transparency in the research process means that resources are often wasted on duplication costs for both for research that simply doesn't replicate and for recreating research materials that already exist but are stashed away and unavailable for reuse. Changing the academic landscape to reduce this end of career threat by increasing the proportion of permanent positions can support quality in research, because open scholarship, such as providing fair data, making materials available for reuse, and carrying out replication and reproduction projects simply takes time. And because these are permanent tasks that should be carried out continuously, I advocate dedicating permanent positions for them, particularly to open scholarship officers working on these tasks. Fourth, under the extreme market pressure that we see at the moment for the few permanent contracts that are available, educators are actually not incentivized to prepare thoroughly for classes, to innovate in their teaching methods and didactics, and to prepare high quality educational materials, or let alone to share these materials with the community. Because the incentive system in academia simply doesn't prioritize teaching, it prioritizes publications. And because teaching is not prioritized, this also means that open scholarship is not being introduced in research in teaching curricula at a speed that would be appropriate if it is not even ignored altogether. However, with without representing good research practice in higher education, this just means that academia fails to adequately educate the researchers of tomorrow. So increasing the proportion of permanent positions would go a long way to actually secure quality in teaching, with then foreseeable spillover effects to fostering research quality, because research knowledge and skills could be passed on to the next generations of researchers better, who could then do better research. And then fifth and finally, I would argue that the current incentive scheme rewards researchers whose research output is high, measured in terms of academic publications and citations. But this is a super myopic criterion for research quality, or for the quality of the staff that you're looking to hire. Because it sets very narrow boundaries for how researchers ought to use their time. And it fails to address the many important tasks associated with conducting research that are not covered by the narrow description of research output measured in terms of academic publications and citations. I like to call these tasks civic duties. I don't know if there's perhaps a better word for it, but I mean tasks such as contributing to academic self-administration, committee work, investing in high quality teaching and mentoring, and also taking up emerging societal needs in one's research agenda and contributing to the research communication with the public. All these things are currently not incentivized adequately in the way that the few permanent positions are awarded, and instead they're kind of expected from researchers to do this just at the side, as if they were a jack of all trades, and they could magically separate themselves into 3 additional beings and carry out additional tasks. And I think it's unreasonable to expect that, and instead we should budget time in academic staff that academic staff can allocate to these tasks. And increasing the proportion of permanent positions would make room for academic staff dedicating time, creativity, and also care to these civic duties beyond core research tasks. So to summarize, I would argue that the academic system needs a higher proportion of permanent positions for numerous reasons. One of these reasons is that the quality of research conducted in academic institutions can benefit from increasing the proportion of permanent positions. Surely it would be unreasonable to expect that more permanent positions automatically and necessarily lead to a higher quality of research, to more openness and transparency and more robustness of research, to more outreach activities and more programmatic and more collaborative research. But revising the priorities imposed by the incentive schemes and employment benefits, employment policies of academic staff could be used to leverage the working conditions under which actually good research practice is possible. Good research practice, rigor, and high quality research are supported and incentivized. And by setting these new standards, culture could change in academia. And I say this not just because I am Hanna and I am one of these researchers employed on a non-permanent position, but because I generally find this an important change to make, to refocus on research quality and to actually budget the time that is necessary to be able to do this. Now with that, if you'd like, I'd be happy to jump into the discussion, and let me thank you again for giving me the opportunity to talk here today.
Thank you very much. And thank you for a very interesting presentation. Yeah, you had mentioned the idea of going through a project, doing the research, and then having your contract expire and not being able to finish that. I can't even imagine how frustrating and what a waste of energy and resources that could be. So a very interesting argument. Thank you very much. We have a few minutes now for our Q&A, questions and answers. We already have, I see 3 questions, then we'll have our lunch break after that. But just for fun, I'd like to put the QR code one more time up there in case there's any last minute questions. Thank you very much, Malta, for our regie. And also, of course, you can go into the Zoom for the Q&A tool to ask any questions there. And with that, I'd like to go ahead. Is it Rima or Rima-Maria?
Oh, Rima is fine.
Rima is fine. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Good. Then we'd like to open up our Q&A discussion round with Rima. And we'll go ahead. The first question I already see there. Thank you. It is, should the image of the institution impact on the quality assessment of a researcher?
Okay, so if I understand correctly, this question basically asks whether researchers from institutions that are more prestigious, let's say, should be assessed differently than researchers who are from other places of employment. And I'm not sure that should be the case, because the place where you conduct your research doesn't necessarily say anything about how good a researcher you are. And honestly, well, this is my opinion, but I think that often we underestimate the importance of the quality of the researcher themselves, the ability of a person, and overestimate the names of the institutions that come with their employment. So my personal opinion would be, no, the institutional image shouldn't make a difference.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. We're ready now for our next question, and I will see if we can blend that in there. How can one make a university to make, the question just jumped over, so I'll read to this next one. Do you mean, we're jumping back and forth. Hopefully stay there, please. How can one make a university to make more permanent positions to increase research quality? So what can we do to give them more incentives?
Yeah, so I think it's not necessarily only the universities that need to make a change, but actually the legislator behind this should be in charge of providing legislation that actually allows them to make these changes. We've seen in Germany, for instance, in Berlin, that there's been a revision of the employment conditions recently, that where the state of Berlin implemented a change that now the universities have to take up. And again, staying with the German example, the Wissenschaftszeitvertragsgesetz, so that's the Germany-wide legislation that is the foundation for which employment conditions are derived from. So this is about to be reevaluated, and we might see a change in the legislation coming up. So I believe that this would actually be the best pressure point to change the system itself. So to have a bit of a bottom-up change instead of pushing for a different way around for universities to implement this on their own. To specifically speak with universities, however, may still be an appropriate way to get them to assess if they have more options to implement permanent positions. Sometimes universities have a bit more wiggle room and can actually do something if they're asked to do it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Let's move on to our next question. Thank you. Do you mean public institutions pay for the training of researchers who then spend their expertise in private enterprises?
Yeah, surely in part this is the case. Surely in part the highly qualified academics that are pushed out of the system then just end up in industry positions, where, however, we may or may not see that their skills are particularly valued. So, of course, in research and development jobs, researchers that came from public institutions may be super qualified already, but there may also be other positions where the specific talents that a researcher has developed, such as spending hours and hours coding in a language that is only used for this one specific research technology, they may just not be valued. And we may see that these skills are therefore also underdeveloped in our public institutions, and nobody really wants to take up this specific task because it may be non-valued outside of academia. And inside of academia, it actually takes you so long to learn this language, let's say, or, for example, that it may just not pay out for you to do this. Mm-hmm. So this might, in the end, actually end up hindering the kind of research we can do, because we have to fear that if the clock runs out, these skills are just not useful.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. Absolutely. Okay, thank you. I believe we still have one or two more questions. Yes, the next one coming up. What would be the first step to convince institutions to allocate more resources for civic duties? This is very inspiring, but hard to change the traditional measures. Absolutely true.
Yeah, absolutely true. I think I know from the case of a university where I was previously employed in the Netherlands that they have actually agreed on the department level on the evaluation criteria for the academic staff employed there. So at that level, they have agreed that there are a couple of things that are important, such as the commitment to research quality, of course, but also on the other hand, other things matter. And it's not just research that matters for one's employment at that department, but it's also teaching, and it's also outreach, and it's also creating value for society. So I think there may be ways that go from the very small example of implementing at the department level such a a way of measuring what a good employee should do, to doing this in a very different way, by just redesigning what kind of positions we have available in academia. And of course, this is not something that a single department can do. They can only implement the positions that are available at that university. But this is something that we could do if there was actually system-wide change and change in legislation. So why is it that we only have researcher positions and researchers are supposed to do everything? Why is it that we don't have positions for research engineers or software engineers or for open scholarship officers? So we could just design new positions. So I think we could tackle the problem from both sides, and it would be, I think it would take both ways to change the system that we have at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I just heard we have several more questions coming in, so I would say let's do 4 more questions, and we'll go ahead then, and then we'll go to our lunch break. Next question. Given today is International Women's Day, congratulations to all the women out there, absolutely. We know that the number of women in research, at least in science, is low. How would this help give equity to females in academia?
Yeah, thank you for raising this point. Actually, I believe if we were more honest about the tasks that people employed in academia have to carry out, this would vastly improve the working conditions for female academics as well. So I think about in part of the fact that women tend to spend a lot more time on service than men in academia. So be it being a reviewer or serving in academic self-administration, we often see that women take over these jobs more than men do. And this in the end means that there is less time left for doing research for women. So if we were more honest about budgeting this time and planning this time, then this would mean that, first of all, men would also take over more of a share in these activities. And that also, on the other hand, women who do invest time in these activities wouldn't then be punished for it because they can't at the same time boost their publication count the way that men do, who just don't accept side projects, if you want to call them that, or these civic duties. So I think this would be one way of increasing of just recognizing the merit of the work that women do in research and in science. And of course, there are many other ways how being more honest and being more sustainable in creating working conditions could help women and could help people of all sexes and genders accommodate family and working conditions and having a personal life, which is difficult to handle if there is so much uncertainty about the employment conditions that whether you will have a job in 3 years or not might make a huge difference for how you plan your life. And some people weather this uncertainty better than others. And we have to worry that privilege, whether it comes from gender or from other sources of privilege, may create hugely biased selection procedures for permanent positions in academia.
True. Thank you very much. Yes. Our next question, please. What happens to the next generation when all positions are filled? Fascinating.
Yeah. So I don't actually think that we would run into a huge problem because academics still tend to be quite flexible. So I often hear also the argument that if all positions are filled, there would be no more fluctuation. There couldn't be any hires from abroad, let's say, and nobody would want to come and work in the system because it's full. But we have similar employment conditions where permanent positions are just the norm in other industries. And somehow they manage to solve this without a problem. So there's still fluctuation and people will still go to positions that are opening up that are better than theirs. And we don't have to threaten people with unemployment at the end of their contract in order to create fluctuation in the system. And I think this is true within and between generations. So I don't honestly think that academia is much different from other places, other sectors of industry where permanent employment is just the norm.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next question. How can one make a university to make more permanent positions to increase research quality?
Yeah, I think one way to go would be to speak with the leadership of the university and to bring forth this argument to say that to increase research quality, it needs research positions that are actually permanent and that people thrive and produce high quality work when they are not threatened by a career that might end unduly early, also for reasons completely outside of their control. So this would be, I think, my way to approach this.
Excellent, thank you. And it's time for our last question. We can see that there. How does the Reproducibility Network link up with other initiatives such as the UK Reproducibility Network in the field? Examples.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the GRN, the German Reproducibility Network, is still quite young. The presentation that I gave today is one of our first attempts at getting our feet wet and producing a white paper. Actually, we're writing this up at the moment. This is one of our first tries to do something to create some impact in the German academic environment, and we're working on a couple of other examples as well, which if you want to know more about, I would invite you to go and check out the website. That's reproducibilitynetwork.de. So there you will see a list of our activities, and of course we're super interested in connecting with the other reproducibility networks in other countries. So we have great connections with the UKRN and also with the other networks that are continuously being founded now. It's fantastic to see that this is growing. We're in touch, and we're also working on some stuff together, where I'm not entirely sure to what degree this is public knowledge, but there's some grant proposal writing that is going on. So we're definitely looking to leverage the manpower and the brain power of these larger networks to do something together. Yeah. Fantastic.
Thank you very much. Really fascinating. And I'd like to again virtually give you a round of applause for a fantastic presentation.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you so much. Dr. Rima-Maria Rahal, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the excellent questions. Really fantastic. Glad that that's coming okay through. I had heard that unfortunately you cannot join us this afternoon for our Speakers Corner. That's why I gave you a few extra minutes for the Q&A, and it certainly was worth it. So thank you for taking that extra time for us.
Thank you, David. And if somebody wants to reach out, I'm always there by email.
Excellent. Well, your email address is in the program somewhere. How can they reach you? Just so they know.
I hope my email address is in the program. I'm not super sure, but perhaps we can pop it in the chat. That might be the easiest way to go.
Okay, and you put it there, and they have, excellent. And they have also, I know on their program, we have social media links too, where people can reach out to our speakers as well. Thank you very much to everyone else. I would say we're going to go now to our lunch break. One important message I would like to say, of course, you can turn off your cameras and microphones, enjoy a good lunch. However, if you'd like to, you have the option to stay and meet with old friends and colleagues. We will keep the Zoom links open. I see now also the email there. Very good, from Rima. And if you'd like to stay, we have here, it's called a social networking room that is with Zoom. So you can go and talk to friends and colleagues. And if not, we look forward to seeing you back here again in about 50 minutes. So that would be 1 o'clock in the afternoon here in Germany, Central European time. Have a good lunch break and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bis gleich.